So has the Pixel 8 series captured your interest? Well, for us, we're going to let you guys know what we felt about the event and some of the positive and negative things that kind of came out from what Google announced. So
yeah.
Now, of course, overall, we're going to try to keep this concise, but we will probably hit on some rumors that did come true. And some of this might be redundant from past episodes that go back over, well, I don't know, Riley, what, a couple months maybe?
Yeah, a few. Yep.
But the first one we're going to start off with is the Pixel Watch 2. So not really sure if there was anything in there that you felt like was worth mentioning, but I did notice some highlights. So I'll let you go first.
Sure. So obviously a couple of things that we had rumored to be true was the safety check.
Yes.
And the new health risk sensors, that was correct as well. That longer battery life, the 24-hour one with AOD.
Yes.
Pretty solid. We'll see if that lives up to if it actually is that much, which most likely it is. And then pretty much everything else seemed to be similar to the previous one. Obviously, we do have a new look for the GUI. That was also a rumor that we had looked at. All in all, I'd say that to me, this watch is definitely worth the upgrade, and I'll kind of do what I did with the Apple event. I'll rate it if it's a good upgrade. So I'll put a 7.5. I think it was very well thought out. You get a lot of different extra bands with it. The look is still the same, but there's still a lot that's updated here to where it's like, I think it'd be worth it for most people. Yeah,
and like you were noticing with the battery life, so that really has to do with the fact that they're no longer relying on the Exynos series chip for processing.
Right.
They're actually using the Qualcomm W5, which is obviously what we said before. Mm-hmm. By the marketing, the battery life seems to be well improved, and it's clearly not because of the 12 extra milliamps. I don't feel like that could actually lend 24 hours with AOD on. Now, I still doubt that. I have a hard time with 24 hours with AOD, but I'm not sure if you feel more confident than I do with that, but that's where I stand.
It remains to be seen.
Yes. So we'll have to let you know once we actually get the kind of the real world results in. Right. They did update the sensors on the back, so kind of just to improve accuracy when it comes to health. So I was impressed to see that they were trying to look at beyond just, okay, we're going to give you longer battery life. We're going to improve some things here. And really the only thing that I was kind of taken back by, and I don't even think this is necessarily a bad thing. I think it's Google trying to test the waters. Okay. But I find it interesting that they still haven't announced a different size for the watch. Samsung has different sizes. Yeah. Apple has different sizes. They've actually had one since the first gen Apple Watch. So I'm actually curious if and when they do introduce a larger size. I'm not sure if that's something that you were kind of thinking of or maybe questioning, but that kind of hit me out there. So
not necessarily, and there are a couple of reasons why. Number one, this is only the second gen, and normally for any newer watch, I mean, you can look back into the Apple Watch series, and the first few didn't have any major difference. There wasn't an SE or anything like that.
Right.
And then the second reason is maybe, and this is kind of a stretch, but maybe Google doesn't want to kind of play the same cards as Apple and releasing too many devices at once where it's kind of overwhelming. Again, that's more of a stretch theory than the previous one, but I don't think it's really necessary at this time. A little more refinement, although I don't really think it needs too much more. And I'd say another year or two, and I think definitely that I would agree with you in that scenario. Google should definitely release a second watch, whether it be sort of an A or a Pro version. So yeah, I just don't think right now.
I mean, yeah, it doesn't even have to be a Pro for me. I mean, I would just like to have a larger size because, quite frankly, the first gen, it was a little dinky. And for a guy, I'd like to have something a little bit more masculine. So this is going to work great for, the females out there. You guys will love this watch just because, I mean, if you haven't already seen the first gen, it's very sleek, very smooth. I personally like the design. The chassis, there are a couple of things that we didn't like last year just because it did seem kind of cheap, like for the crown, we talked about that. So in my opinion, overall, I would probably go, not even a half a point, I'd actually go a full point below. I would say this is like a 6.5. That's kind of where I stand, but Maybe that'll change once I start using it and see how it works. But at least they made the right changes, especially with battery life, because I think that was the worst thing with that first gen. So I'm glad they addressed that.
Yeah, you're always 1 point below me on things, so that's
well.
that's
I know the Apple
fair.
that we had. There was a couple there where we had like maybe a half a point, but this one I was just like, I don't know if I would rate it 7.5, but it kind of depends on your perspective and if you really do feel like the improvements were worth it. So
yeah,
that's kind of where I stand.
Yeah, that's fair.
In either case, before we get into the actual Pixels or the smartphones, I should say. We're just going to go over some of the software because I feel like they did highlight some key things there. I'll actually let you go first, Riley. What do you think that was the best, or what you like that really stood out to you?
Yeah, I'd have to say the best take, the rumor that we talked about.
Yeah.
I feel like that was excellent. It was kind of a lot more than we were expecting. And that's the thing when we were texting each other. I was telling JD, I was like, I was expecting good things, but it's not as what I expected this much to be. It looks so. You can't even tell that AI was actually working on those faces or changing and finding the best ones. It looks really good. And like I said...
At least on the demo.
Yeah. It remains to be seen on how this is actually going to look. Like how we said on Monday, there is that concern of how far you're willing to go with AI until it's just too unrealistic. But I feel like this
the magic editor,
I
think, is what we...
The magic, yes. The magic eraser, the magic editor, exactly. That one kind of took me a little bit back because
they were taking away the cooler and moving the. I just didn't.
Yeah, it just looked like the guy just jumped up and got a perfect dunk, like without even doing a whole lot. And I'm like,
that too. Yep.
Yeah, it just takes away a bit from reality. But I feel like this is kind of in just nearly near that gray area where it's not too bad. But yeah, the best take was my favorite thing, I think, out of the camera features.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree. And actually, we'll post a link to the quick promo that they had for the best take because I really feel like that's something as a consumer you guys would want to check out. The other stuff that they had that we talked about in the rumors is the magic audio eraser. Mm-hmm. It's just helpful because the AI can isolate unwanted foreign noises, and then it'll allow you to select which of those noises you want to keep or remove.
Yes, that was a really cool one.
It was cool. Yep. And I don't really think that one is as questionable just because I really do feel like isolating noise and making that more personal and hearing, I think they have a demo of a baby or something talking and it kind of took away the barking in the back. I felt like that was really key. So it's not so much of a gray area unless you think there's certain areas. Yeah.
No, I think it's hard to tell because there's a lot of different sounds that may be hard to dissipate, if you will.
Yeah.
I feel like Google would have really thought that out a lot. So
right.
I'll be a little surprised if there are not too surprised if there are certain things that you can't eliminate. But for the most part, I think it would work pretty well.
Yeah, because I feel like in this case, it's not so much about masking or faking something. It's more about enhancing a memory. So
yes.
Like you were saying with taking out the picnic table when the guy jumped up on it to make a dunk. That one is obviously, more of a questionable fake area. With noises, it's really supposed to help focus. And yes, so that's what I did like about that one. And then the other feature that I really liked was, this is really cool, is the call screen. And I thought this was really helpful. And if you ask me, it's a bit, I was actually telling Riley this, it's a bit more seamless than potentially what iPhone offers.
Right.
In it that Google uses the assistant to screen the calls before it pushes it through to a ring. So, they demoed off how it responds to spam and legitimate calls. So, I mean, did you actually think that there was anything that you were like, oh, I really don't think that was the right way they did that?
I hate scammers.
Right. Yep.
And I've always wanted there to be some way to because sometimes I might miss an important call, but usually I disregard it because it doesn't look like something I'm familiar with. And sometimes
yes.
With iPhone, it usually says like scam calls, so sometimes it's easy to tell.
Telemarketing.
With this, oh my word! I really want to try out a Pixel. This new one. I'm really seriously like I love the way.
No, I don't blame you.
They procured the AI technology and the assistant here because it really is an essential thing for a phone. Honestly, especially nowadays. Do I think there's any issues with it? There could be. AI is not perfect. It may cause that's
what I was thinking.
Some unhappenings that you don't want, if you will. But I think for the most part, this is going to do really well because there are no other phones that do this. As far as I'm aware, there are not. So Pixels takes the stand with that one.
Yeah.
And I just thought this was amazing. Because we've seen this before. I was telling JD, because we saw this before with scheduling.
Yes.
I thought that was cool. This is amazing.
Yeah, like you were saying, I think probably the only thing that I would question is the accuracy at what it's detecting in the calls.
Yes.
So, you know, we'll find out. I'm sure they'll continue to enhance that with updates and such.
Agreed, yeah.
But that's really the only thing that I was sort of hesitant about, aside from the fact that this is really an amazing feature.
Mm-hmm.
And really, just to quickly clarify this for you listeners, when we're comparing this with the iPhone actually has visual voicemail, so it'll push through to when a caller wants to leave a voicemail, and it will offer voice to text on your lock screen, letting you know, okay, what is the person actually saying right away?
Yes.
So some people might actually like that. I think that is beneficial. But I feel like Google's approach is to save you time from having to deal with.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's sort of I guess you could be a 50-50. For me, I'm a little bit more leaning towards Google, and I think that's kind of what you are.
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
But in either case, we'll jump right into the baseline, which is the Pixel 8. And I'm sure you have some things you probably want to say about this one. But
for a base model, this does really, really well. But it also doesn't do so above and beyond that it's not worth it to get the Pro.
Yeah.
Like I've said this before, where when you're doing a base and a Pro, you need to make sure that they're split enough to where, you know, the Pro is more worth it because it has more specs, but the base model is also good, so it kind of splits a good difference. You don't want to have something where it's like the 8 is, you know, magnificent, the Pro is exactly the same. Those are some key important issues. I think they did really well at keeping this to where the 8 had some really good specs for the camera, and you still got the AI features on the 8 as well. It wasn't like if you could only have these features. The only exception to that rule was the Pro controls. That was it. Everything else you got, which is amazing. The look of it looks great. The colors, I'm really interested in those for sure. Oh, Obsidian, Snow, and Hazel.
I actually like Hazel.
Yes, I do like Hazel too. It's not subtle. It's just right where it's like you can see the brilliance of that sort of pinkish.
Yeah.
But it's not like up in your face either. So really good choice of colors here. This actually does run a 120 hertz display, whereas the previous model ran a 90. Which is really good.
Yep. Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
That uses their new Actua display. So
yes.
It's an increase from 1,000 to 1,400 nits.
Yes.
And you can get a max of 2,000 nits in high brightness mode, which is basically if you're in direct sunlight. So that was really nice to have. As far as the actual chassis itself, it is, I think it's a little bit more round on the corners, if I'm not mistaken. So
it is. Yeah.
And you also get a flatter display, which I'm personally a bigger fan of that than the rounded edges. I'm not sure if that's your call or not, but...
I personally prefer rounded edges, but for this specific model, it's not too far off to where I'm like, it's good. It's a solid design on the edge.
It is good. Yeah. And I think the only other thing that I noticed as far as a physical change was the battery.
Yes.
They switched that up from 4355 to 4575. So that's about 220.
Yep.
Which is great. And I think that mixed with the boost of from 20 watts to 27 watt charging, that's going to be great to have as well.
I was just going to say that, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you had any other physical changes that you noted. Those are only a couple that I saw on there. So from the event.
The only other thing is obviously this, and just like the 8 Pro, this is running Android 14.
Yes,
so
which that dropped. Yep.
And the rumor about the 7 years of updates was true.
Yes.
I was in shock because, I mean, I wouldn't think Google would have done that. I wouldn't have been surprised if they didn't, but still, like 7 years.
That one blew me away about as much as Best Take. Those are the two that I was like really impressed by.
It really did.
And we talked about the rumors. We talked about the fact that it might be 5 to 6 years, but 7 years is ridiculous. 2030 is how long those phones will be supported for. That's incredible.
Yeah, that's when Apple will finally be carbon
net zero.
free.
Yeah. Which is what Google's pushing for as well. But that's just crazy. I was really happy that they're doing that. We talked about the pros and cons, but honestly, at this point in time, I really don't care what the naysayers are talking about. This is what's happening, and I'm glad that they went through this.
And by the
Yeah.
way, people, this is coming from people who own iPhones. And this is like brilliant. So, we're not being biased or anything. Like, this is exceptional. The specs here are great, what they offer you. And we haven't gotten to the pros yet. That's what we were talking about when we were texting each other. We were like, this is just the base. They haven't even talked about the pros yet. Goodness gracious. How is that going to look? And we were still amazed by that. So all in all, and I'll let you put yours in the 8. I will give it a solid 8. Coincidentally, I'll give the 8 an 8.
The 8 will get an 8.
I think it's an excellent upgrade from the previous model. I don't see a reason why you wouldn't. It's still, because I think what was the MSRP of the 7? It was about the same.
So that is the only downside to these is, and I'll just say it for the Pro as well, they both went up $100.
That's right. Okay.
So that is one of the negative things. There's another negative point that I'll get to later, but it wasn't like I'm frustrated by it, but it wasn't like we weren't expecting it because we saw this happen with the Pixel 7a.
Yep.
I wish it wasn't $100, but I mean, what are you going to do? And I'll actually go just a little lower. I'll say 7.5. I really feel like that was a good model. I wouldn't necessarily discourage any Pixel 7 owners from upgrading to this.
No, not at all.
Because I feel like there are some key things that you can go for. And I think the only thing that messes with the upgrade is the trade-in values were a little bit skewy. So you'll have to decide whether or not, as far as a value point, if that's something you want to do. But outside of that, I do agree with you, Riley. I think that was a really good upgrade from last year's model. So as far as the battery on the 8 Pro, we'll get to that next model. It was only 50 more milliamps, so nothing crazy
not
there.
A major change.
However, we do get a boost of 7 watts. So now it's up 30 watts over 23. On the older 7 Pro, which this is good. I'm glad that they're trying to boost this. I wish Apple would attack this a little bit more in the future with their charging capabilities, because we have seen many other Androids just blow these numbers away. And that's really something that I wouldn't say it's a negative point, because it does the job. But it would just be nice to have that little extra boost so you don't have to wait so long or be like, oh, it's at 89. I don't want to take it off yet or something like that. So real quick, the other thing is just kind of similar to what we had in the 8. As we mentioned, the displays were improved. So this one actually gets not the Actua display. It actually gets Super Actua display, which we thought there was something funny about that. What was that? I'm drawing a blank.
Sad.
That's right. It was the... It was the acronym Super Actua Display, SAD. So I'm sure that was totally unintentional, but I can't imagine somebody didn't already address that in the marketing.
Yes.
But so as far as those numbers, they can go up to 1600 nits, and then with high brightness mode, it's 2400 nits. Yeah. So I think that's actually more than the 15 Pro Max, if I'm not mistaken. I think that the Pro Max gets like 2000.
It looks like it's 2000. You're right.
They did upgrade the main and the telephoto to improve more light, and then the ultra wide actually got some improvement when it comes to clarity with macros.
Yes.
So I thought those were great, and we also have autofocus now on the selfies. So I'm not sure if any of those you're more excited about seeing than I was. I think it's just overall this is just the improvements that we need to see with those stepping stones.
Again, not surprised by those updates. Not a whole lot to say. I do think the autofocus is definitely a good update on that. And you are getting the Pro controls as well. Like
the Pro controls, yes.
Not a whole lot here to discuss. For me personally, just some really solid updates. Although it does look, I will say, the actual telephoto is 113 instead of 120. So a slight...
Oh, the degrees?
Yeah, a slight dent there.
Oh, okay. I did not catch that.
Yeah, but it's not anything major that I'm like, I wouldn't upgrade to this one, because you're still getting the upgrade ultra wide and it's 30 times zoom. So
I'm sure they'll find ways to counteract the things that they've adjusted.
They use AI.
I'm not sure if you'll notice that. Yeah, they'll use AI. Yeah. They'll use the tensor, however quote unquote powerful it is. And then like you were saying, and just for clarity, the Pro controls are basically, it kind of just gives, for those who know what it's like, or the Pro users, just more adjustment on their photos and what they can change and kind of manipulate. So I think that's really cool. I think that's something that we've talked about in the past, and I'm going to reference this back to the Sony Xperia, because we've talked about how there's so many controls on there, and it would be nice to simplify them. In this case, Google is allowing you to adjust it and say, okay, you can, enable this or adjust this and go into the pro control settings and go from there. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll have to see how it works, but I think based on what they were explaining, this is a good advantage and a good way to go about executing this.
Yeah, for sure.
And they had something about video.
Video boost.
So I really don't know the essentials of it. I think it was just a major improvement when it comes to video recording. And they talked about, how they compared it to the iPhone 15 Pro Max.
Oh, yeah.
And this is where those comparisons come into play. And I'm like, I really don't know if like what I'm supposed to be expecting when it comes to recording videos, other than I'm hoping it gets closer to what iPhones can do with video. Because I feel like they are the leader of the pack when it comes to that. And then the other part of that was night sight with video. And Riley and I kind of looked at this and we were a little on the fence if we liked it or not. I wasn't really a big fan. But you were like, you didn't think it was so bad when it comes to nightscape and stuff like that.
So, really quick, when you're doing night mode, it depends on how much lighting there is and what kind of city or scenery you're in.
Yeah.
Because if you have, like, the one picture that we were looking at, the one that Google was showing us during the event, that was kind of weird when you increase the night mode on that. Because there was already so much light, and I feel like it did take away a little bit. But if you had some lesser light and maybe a smaller city, I feel like then night mode would work actually very well in that scenario. So I think it depends, but it's still a major improvement from the previous model in terms of how well it's able to adapt at nighttime. So yeah, I think it's pretty okay. I think nothing super exciting, but it's just a
for me, I felt like it was just a little too crazy. And personally, I like it when you get a nightscape that just highlights the lights of the windows from a far distance, and it just has that beautiful feel to it.
Yep.
So there's some pros and cons, and I think a lot of that just depends on preference. And I'm hoping that they can give you the options of saying, okay, do you want it more aggressive, kind of like what Riley was explaining, or do you want it a little more subtle? And just something that you can enjoy and not be so crazy. So, but outside of that, I don't think there was anything else as far as the pros that we noted.
The rating for this one.
Oh, the rating, yes.
I will give it a 7. I don't think it's as good as you would get from the upgrade from the 8. I think this one is a solid upgrade, but I feel like it's losing out on certain things and putting other upgrades in. It's kind of give and take. With the 8,
like the temperature sensor.
Yes. Yeah. With the 8, I feel like it was give. There really wasn't a whole lot to take. And I think that, so for a 7 rating, I think that's like, it's solid. It's I think you should upgrade, but I also think that it's not necessary, or it's not super like, you have to buy this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say the 8 overall wins for me for this event, and just in terms of what you're getting out of it, the price, the specs, all that stuff. So
I'm actually going to go, I'm not even going to go a half point, I'm going to full point. So I'm going to go down to a 6. And here's the reason why. It took me one more notch because I feel like we're at that point where we need to stop having a Pro model with 128 gigabytes of storage. That still ticks me off, especially when they increase the price. This is now a $1,000 phone. So that's something that I was like, I wish they would just stop with the whole entire 128. It's totally understandable about a Pixel 8 base. That I get.
Yeah.
If you want to get a 128, you got to keep the cost down somehow. That's fine. But with Pro users and all the additional features they're adding, I'm sure that's going to take up some storage as well. I don't understand why it takes them so long. And it's actually kind of funny because Apple is the one that went to a base 256, even though they raised the price.
Yep.
Pixel 8 Pro, they're still at a 128, and they also raised the price. So I just kind of feel like that was a bit of an annoyance. Yes, absolutely. So, but outside of that, we can probably just go to the end here and kind of overhaul what we thought about the event. I think it was, in my opinion, pretty much a success. I wouldn't really say there's anything specific that would be like, okay, I actually wish they just waited a year or something like that, aside from the two things that we talked about with the price and the storage.
Yeah, and it was also an in-house event, and those are my favorites. So, and I'm kind of biased towards those just because the experience, like we've discussed a whole bunch, but the experience, it feels so much more immersive when you're doing in-house. But yeah, everything went smoothly. I don't think there was anything that I had an issue with. The whole event, just it was very intriguing. I was focused the whole time. No, I didn't fall asleep. Yes. Whereas I felt like with the Apple events, they're good. They're not like horrible or anything. Not like a OnePlus. Like that's base. But I feel like
Apple focuses in on too many
cinematography.
There's something about it that just loses traction, and I wouldn't even say it's because it's a pre-recorded. I think there's just the way they attack certain things. It kind of leaves me a little bit versus Google, where I think they try to go with everyday practicality that actually is meaningful and you can use. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So overall, yes, this event did definitely capture us, and I am really excited to test out these products and give you guys my opinion on how I feel they upgraded from last year's model as well. So,
yep.
With that said, that will close it out for this week's Debatable. A little bit shorter than usual, but we wanted to definitely keep it concise. We will catch you guys in the next one. This is JD and Riley signing off.
I cracked the top of my phone. Peace out.